Hello, Maverick traders. This is Rob Reinhold. I'm joined by Mr. Ankit Sharma, and we are through the end of July. So we have one more day left in July's trading. So it'll be nice to send out profits next week to all of our profitable traders. But the market says, okay, July is closed. We've got August to deal with. So let's first start out with what happened last week, go over it really quickly, and then we'll carry into our outlook and what we think is likely to happen next week. The equities had a big up week this week. We had the biggest monthly gain since November 2020, and that's a big deal. We should have seen a real risk-on move in foreign currencies. Now, we saw a huge risk-on move in cryptos. They had their best monthly gain since October 21, but we should have seen a better risk-on move. We just didn't. We'll take a look at all of that here. We did hear from the FOMC last week. They raised by 75 basis points, but in the press conference, Powell said that they were possibly going to slow down the rate pace hikes because of the weakening economy. The market really liked that. And really the market's gains came on 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Before that, the market was actually down about 1.2%. And so big jump from the FOMC. And we also got negative GDP on Thursday for the US. And that is the second consecutive negative GDP point. Now, a lot of people have been sending me messages saying, hey, Rob, does this mean we're in recession? Look, technically speaking, the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research for the U.S. government, they officially declare it a recession. And they look at a lot of other things other than just 2 consecutive negative quarters of GDP. They are very late to announce it as a recession. And when they actually do announce it, the recession is usually over. And so whether we're in a recession or not in the US, I don't think it really matters. The equity markets have tumbled 25% this year because of the recession that we're possibly in or possibly not in. Again, it doesn't matter. The question is, where do we go from here? The S&P was up a whopping 4.3%. That's a nice jump. And as I said, that came all on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The VT up nicely as well. Cryptos, another good week. Now look, I didn't think cryptos were going to have this good a week. Last week on Tuesday in my market review, I called them garbage, is what I actually said. And I think it made them mad. They definitely weren't listening to me and went significantly higher last week. So cryptos are starting to look decent. Gold up, oil up. So again, everything got bought, risk on, all across the board. Let's take a look here at the S&P. As you can see here, we had some resistance at that 4,000 area. We blew through that on Wednesday, and then we kept going. And you can see that we are heading into this really strong point of resistance. We're still bullish. Take a look at these candles. These candles are very clearly bullish. We are above the 50 moving average. We're above the 20. The 20 moving average is about to cross over the 50, which is another good bullish symbol. There's a lot of good signs out there that the market is starting to become more of a bullish market than a bearish market like we've had pretty much all year. For me, it needs to get through this resistance to make me a true believer. I'm like at a +1. I'm mildly bullish at the moment. If we can get through this area of 4,100 to 4,175, if we can get through that, I've got to go up to a +2. I got to get a little bit more bullish because the market has proven that it wants to move higher. Let's take a look at how the foreign currencies did. You can see this is just a scattered mess. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said that it didn't really follow anything that it should have. We should have seen the Aussie, the Kiwi, and the CAD all up pretty significantly this week. Take a look at it. It didn't happen. What went up? The yen. Why would the yen go up in a risk-on move? Ankit, why don't you tell people your theory on why the yen was so strong this week?
Hey, absolutely. There's one thing that I've been kind of paying close attention to is the bond yields, and I kind of pointed out earlier to you that the Japanese yen, the 10-year, actually had its biggest drop in months. I mean, we are falling below now to close to a 200 moving average, and these bond yields have had really a big impact on the currency exchange rates. Remember how the yields really started to take off back in March, and you can actually see that across the board, across the major central banks. All their yields were really cooking up because of the inflation fears, and now that's coming out dramatically down. And in the past couple of days, I mean, we have seen the Japanese bond yields have actually dropped the most. And that seems to be kind of contributing to this yen strength because it has been really one-sided trade. As the Bank of Japan is fighting that 0.25% ceiling on the 10-year yields, when they drop off dramatically, now that gives more breathing room for Bank of Japan not to print more money to keep fighting that battle. So that's a bit of a positive for the yen. And I think that's what really caused that move. And also because we are sitting at such extreme levels on a lot of these things like yen or even the equity markets or cryptos. Now what we are getting is a bit of a relief. And then when things are so stretched far out, they're snapping back and they're snapping back hard. And I think that's just one of the things that the yen hasn't had is a bit of a snapping back move. So I think that's what's contributing to it.
Awesome analysis, Ankit. And the euro was consistent. We had the euro as our weakest currency on our currency board last week, and it was the weakest currency. But let's take a look at the dollar because the dollar had a big reversal. And again, this came upon Powell's remarks that they weren't going to be as aggressive going forward based on the data. So less rate hikes means a weaker dollar, and I think we could continue to see weaker dollar. Let's jump over to the cryptos. Cryptos just had a good week. Bitcoin Cash, for some reason, it was the worst performer on the way down, and on the bounce, it got the biggest bounce. I don't think you can read anything into that other than it was pushed down more, and maybe there's some short covering. But as you can see here, everything went up about 4 to 7%. So that's a good week. We'll take a look at these on the charts and see if they're actually buyable at these levels. We already took a look at the S&P, so let's jump into the VT. And the VT has climbed above the moving averages as well. It's a little bit behind the S&P, and it's still got some upside, probably up to this 92, 92.50 area. I think that's going to be the next area. So I actually think international stocks have a little bit more upside before they hit resistance than the US markets do. Let's come over here to crypto, and some interesting things have actually happened in crypto. For the first time in months and months, we actually have a 20-period moving average above a 50-day moving average on the daily chart. Now, this is kind of the line in the sand for is something in an uptrend or a downtrend. Now, I don't want to get too excited because when we talk about uptrends and downtrends, everyone thinks uptrend is a wild, raging bull market. Take a look at the steepness of this trend. It's not very steep. Just not very steep at all. So, while I do think cryptos are likely to continue to move higher with the market, are they the best trade out there right now? Possibly, but to me, we're not anywhere close to where we were in 2021 and 2020 with the bullishness. You have to be more bullish than bearish here on cryptos, but I don't think you can be at any more than like a +1, +2. Let's take a look at our schedule. This week is a busy week. It is the first week of the month, which is busy. On Monday, we've got the ISM manufacturing PMI in the US. That's going to move the markets a little bit, but really I'm looking forward to the RBA. Now, this is Tuesday at 12:30 a.m., so this is Monday night. So just think in your mind, Monday night. We will be meeting live for the RBA rate statement. As you can see, expectations are they raise another 0.5 point like they did in the last meeting. We're going to be trading it live, looking for setups live, and we're going to be trading that together as a firm. On Tuesday night, we have New Zealand with unemployment change. That's going to be a mover as well. So if you're looking to trade Kiwi, that could potentially be a catalyst. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, Bank of England. All right. Bank of England is set to meet. They are set to raise by another 50 basis points. I don't think there's really going to be any surprises around this. It's a unanimous 9-0 vote, and so I don't think the pound really moves all that much off of it. They could have a different statement, but we'll see. I think there's a much bigger chance of the RBA giving us some fireworks to trade off of than the BOE. And then on Friday, it is the first Friday of the month, which means U.S. and Canadian employment report. We will also be meeting live for these, and we're going to be looking to place trades around these news events as well. So this week, we've got markets. They're up to the resistance. I think it needs to pause. We had a big surge this week. I could easily see a little bit of a pause. So next week, I think we just kind of go sideways. Maybe we go up a little bit more to go into that resistance area, but I don't think it's going to be as steep of a jump next week as it was the previous week. We do have 2 central banks announcing this week, RBA on Monday night, Bank of England on Thursday, and then economic reports. Check the board for those. So let's jump into analysis, currency by currency. First, we're going to start with the cryptos. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. And as I said earlier, for the first time in a long time, you can begin to make a case that Bitcoin is in an uptrend. It is an uptrend. Take a look. It's not a very fast uptrend, but it is in an uptrend. And so we're just draw some trend lines here. And when we draw these trend lines, okay, now we know where to look. We've got a good velocity here. It's a rising EMA. We got rising parabolic SAR, and we got an RSI that's sitting up there around 70. So short term, I think Bitcoin is a potential buy, but the question is, how much is it going to run up into these trend lines? We come over here to Bitcoin Cash. You can see the Bitcoin Cash was a much steeper story. It was the bigger loser on the way down. So here, let's just draw some trend lines. You can see we're already coming down here on Friday. So I do not like Bitcoin Cash here as much, just because I think we're up here closer to the trend line than we saw in Bitcoin. We go to Ethereum. Ethereum had a nice base, and we just broke out. Now look, if you go over to the velocity score, it's telling you short term, there's a little bit of a pause here. I really like Ethereum much more than Bitcoin on a little bit of just buy this pullback if it's basing right now. But I think there's a good opportunity and possibly long Ethereum next week. We go to Litecoin. Litecoin did about the same thing as Ethereum, but I just want to contrast the two. How much further above the moving averages was Ethereum? It was a lot more. This is sitting on moving averages. So while I do think it's a high base, just like Ethereum, I think Ethereum is still the one to go after if you're going to go after a crypto long here. Let's jump into the currencies. First up is the dollar. Okay, so here is the daily chart. We hit a new high, and we have retraced, and we're coming all the way back into this support area. And we are literally sitting on the 50-period moving averages. But look at these moving averages. They're starting to tip. They're flattening out and starting to tip. It's a little bit too early to call that the dollar is dead and in a downtrend, but I think in a couple days we can make a very strong case short dollar. Very strong case to be more short than long dollar. Velocity score, it's at a -1 right now, so it's saying, hey, okay, just hold on a little bit. I think you need to hold and wait for that those moving averages to break. Going over to the yen. Now, the yen here is a very interesting one, and I don't have a great call on yen. The yen has definitely been elusive. I've made a few yen trades over the last month and just decided, you know what, I'm going to go play somewhere else. As you can see, it's not doing much. It's got a good range, but it's moving up and down. So since I've been consistently wrong on yen, Ankit, why don't you take this one?
Hey, so I mean, I think you're, by just looking at this, like we are right at the range bound. But I do think that once we can clear out of that, there would be a nice little follow through off of that. So I personally do think at this point, if you have been ultra bearish, the yen, and in every rally you see you sell the yen, I think this is a time to kind of take that off the table and just kind of look at the yen from a different approach. And maybe this is where I'm looking to kind of go along the yen on these little pullbacks. And again, the reason why is because things are just so far stretched out. It hasn't really followed that correlation that we usually rely on. So I mean, if it hasn't really followed that correlation on the way down, I don't think the correlation will actually keep it down. I think we can actually see a bit of a change in the markets. And I think this is where dollar yen kind of is at a unique situation, because in the past few months, we have seen a massive risk-off environment. We've seen things come down. The yen hasn't really gotten the bid, so ultimately dollar really gotten the bid. So now when we see the risk improving across the board, people are taking more riskier bets, and now people are going into cryptos. Now that creates a whole different environment. And in that case, all the bets that were all piled into the dollar, I think, will kind of come off. So the yen no longer becomes that ultimate short, because I guess there's other things that are likely to go down more than the yen, because yen's already played out. So personally speaking, I think yen could be a tricky play, go back and forth, but I'm no longer looking at the yen as they're going to keep falling down. I think we can see other currencies, like dollar is prime right now to kind of take off that bet onto the downside, along with other currencies that has been running on this hot inflation and aggressive central banks. I think once those bets start to cool off, exactly what we've seen with the yen, I think this creates an environment where we see some sort of regime change, where the outperformer start to underperform and the underperformers start to outperform. So that's a kind of way I'm looking at markets and not really paying that close attention to correlation, because this week is a great example. The correlations don't always keep you or get you the profitability because of this unique market conditions that we are in. So that's my outlook on the yen. I think I like more on the upside with buying the dips rather than selling the rallies. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Ankit. And let's take a look at the franc, because the franc is a very interesting story. I haven't seen the correlations between euro and franc this wide. So usually they are a correlated pair. If euro goes up, Swiss franc goes up, vice versa. Not over the last month or two. I haven't seen this kind of negative correlation between the two really since 2010 through 2012. This is when the Eurozone was really, really falling apart. Greece was on the brink of default, and everyone was moving their money into Switzerland. We're kind of seeing the same thing here, where Europe is not looking so good. Like, we're looking at gas shortages, we're looking at, negative GDP, and everyone's kind of looking around saying, hey, I think I want to be in the Swiss franc more. And you can see the chart. It's a nice looking chart to the upside. Now look, the steepness of this move is nothing to be impressed with. So again, this is not a rip-roaring market, but I'm going to take a look at Euro Swiss franc here in a little bit. And you're going to see that that's a really nice little play to do, because they're showing some real negative correlation lately. And when we take a look at the euro, we can see that divergence that you were talking about. Big fall, we bottomed out, we had our bounce, and then we fell to new lows. Look, we are probably close to a little short-term bottom here on euro. I would love to see another little rally to sell into. So where I really like euro short, I liked it this week. I took a few trades on it. They were nice. At this point, I really want a bounce or a base off of euro. So at the start of the week, I'm probably not looking to play euro because I want it to bounce or base to give me a better entry point. Right here, right now, it's down at the bottom of its range, just made a new low. I don't think it's ready to go right here, but I love it. It's my favorite short out there. I just need to get a little bit of a bounce on it. Another currency that is looking like a decent short is this pound. So we've got this downtrend. Every time it pops up, it falls. Again, the 20 moving average has been resistance. And then when it finally gets up to the 50, it hits its head on it. So now we've got a confirmation candle. Then we got a confirmation candle on the downside. So look, this isn't the steepest downtrend, and we've got a whole bunch of support down here. I mean, this is a load of support to get through. So I don't think there's a huge bit of downside. And take a look, we touched it on Friday and it rallied right back up. So I think that the trend is lower, but I don't think there's a ton of velocity here. And you can see that it's just not quite there. So the pound is a short, but I've got to find something better because it is not a great short. Euro is a great short, but I want to get a little bit better entry point. Pound, so let's see what else we can find out there. Canadian dollar, really just basing. When you take a look at it all, it just has been in this range here. The question is it going to hold its 50-period moving average? If it does not, if we get a breakdown in CAD, I will then put that on my currencies to sell list. But until then, I'm really just at a neutral on CAD. So nothing to say on CAD. Aussie dollar, what a mess. What an absolute mess on the daily chart. Really, all you can say is it's trading in this wide range, and right now we're in the middle of it. We just had a run up. We just had a reversal candle, confirmation. Okay, so if I had to play it short term, I'd play it to the downside, but it's a +1 and a -1. +1 trend score and -1 velocity score. That's a garbage score. So I just have to throw away Aussie for now until I can get a better score. Coming over here to Kiwi, and we're just sitting right at moving averages. We've hit this point. We've got a lot of support down here. Big question is this ready to turn? You can see the moving averages are flattening out. The question is, can we poke our head up above that? And then if we do, look at all the overhead resistance that we've got above. So Kiwi could be turning here. It could absolutely be turning, and now more in an uptrend than a downtrend. But it's just way too early to stick our neck out for this. So ultimately, there's not a lot of great trades that I'm looking for early on next week. The best trade out there is probably Ethereum. I mean, if someone's said to you, Rob, you have to make a trade next week, you have to, or we'll kidnap your family and whatever. I would probably look to be long Ethereum. Okay, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that was the first call that I kind of made like a couple of weeks ago when we saw that turning around. And what's encouraging about the crypto markets and even the Ethereum is that you know it's been able to reverse all the pullback. So I mean, we made the initial attempt to rally, and I think early this week we got tested. Ethereum went from like 1,600 down to even 1,300, and that made a nice recovery, made to new highs. So I think that's a very good sign. And at this point, I think that's where the consistency, the move has been. So I think overall, that's the place that looks the best, and I think it'll probably continue to be the best, especially as the market sentiment stays positive and the more and more money comes into the crypto space. I think that would remain the best along with the Bitcoin. So I think those two main crypto coins will probably do the best. I'm not really a big fan of Litecoin and any other ones. I think the main ones likely do better. Very similar to what we're seeing right now in the equity markets. All the big players, the Amazon and the Apple. I mean, they're all rising, and that's really lifting everything up. And I think that's exactly what you have to kind of look at in the crypto world and stick with the main ones like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
So this here is the trend score. Let's look at the shorter term velocity score. And you can see that right here, right now, the yen is showing the most momentum, followed by the Swiss franc. And that euro, the euro that I like is the best short. It's right here taking a little bit of a pause. So again, Ethereum, I think, is the best bet here, and also the euro and Swiss franc. But we need to get a little bit of velocity before we can really go after them. So that means that next week, I'm not starting the week thinking, hey, I'm going to make a trade on Sunday or Monday. I'm waiting for things to develop in order to get into a position. So let's take a look at some possible trades out there. The first one I want to take a look at is Ethereum. So here we are in a 4-hour chart, and you can see we've got this really nice high base forming. We got this really nice high base forming where we just need it to clear out. So we had this one little spike. As you can see here, we've been failing at about 1750 here. This day we got all the way up to 1780, 1740. So I'm going to take a look at that 1750 area, and that's going to be okay. If it can break out of this range, I want to get in. It's probably going to coincide with the break of this parabolic SAR as well. So 1760 would be my buy price here on Ethereum. The other pair I wanted to take a look at, Euro Swiss franc. Now I want to pull this out on a daily chart. Actually, let's even go back to a weekly chart. And I want you to see what has happened here to this currency pair. This currency pair has really been trading between, let's call it roughly 102 all the way up to 120 for years. And we are breaking these key levels. And we are down to this level. This big move was when the Swiss National Bank unpegged their currency from the yen. Huge move overnight. And you can see we're back down to these very critical levels. And I think it's going to keep going. I think we're going to see it keep going even lower. So let's go into our 4-hour chart. And let's look for an actual entry point here on this. Again, low base forming. The bottom of that base is 97. I like that as an entry point. So 97 on an entry and somewhere around, I'd say 97.45 for a stop. And then we'll use a trailing stop on the way down, either using a moving average or a parabolic SAR. So those are the two trades I'm really focused on this week. Ankit, what are you focused on?
Hey Rob, well, I think what we need to kind of pay attention to is the narrative. Like, it's what's the call next week? I think dollar is at an interesting kind of cross point. One of the pairs that I've been paying close attention to all week is Aussie dollar. The reason why, if you take a look at where it is from a technical standpoint, looking at the daily chart, that's 70 level. It took the longest time for the Aussie dollar to actually clear out the 70 area. And Rob, if you zoom out, I mean, you can see very clearly going back in like last couple of years how important that the support was, which is now the resistance. So what you're now noticing, and I mean, last couple of days, it actually tested or it got above that and just to pull back really shortly after. So this could be, I mean, if it can reclaim back that area and stays above it, I think we can see that regime change in the Aussie dollar and maybe make a little bit run to the upside. So the biggest thing is what the dollar is going to do. And if the dollar is truly going to break that 50-day moving average, I think that's a great point to take a look at some of the dollar crosses and see which inflection points where we're sitting at, where we can actually see a nice move. And I think Aussie dollar kind of sitting right at the point where if the dollar does give up that 50-day moving average, I would like to be on the buyer side of the Aussie dollar, especially if it can reclaim that 70 level. So that's the first pair I'm looking at. I'm also paying attention to crosses like Aussie CAD and Kiwi CAD. I mean, one of the things that we looked at is both the CAD and the US have kind of done very similar. And if the dollar is going to pull back, my question really goes next week is the CAD's going to pull back along with it? And if we take a look at the regime change, I mean, dollar right now clearly isn't performing with the CAD, but these two things have been kind of staying within a very tight range. So Kiwi CAD is the one that I was paying attention to. Even though the Kiwi is stagnating, the one thing I like about some of these pairings is that they're actually start to move up while the Kiwi is stagnating. So if the Kiwi can catch up a bit of a bid, I actually really like this on a further upside because, I mean, we have been in this downtrend. We have had this massive correction from 87 to now 80 area. I mean, I think this creates an opportunity in some of these crosses. I mean, since March and April, I mean, this is a massive correction. So now we bottomed out. And if we can start to see the Kiwi start to jump up a little bit, I actually paying attention to this Kiwi CAD. I mean, a lot of consolidation here. But that's the one thing we're noticing is a bit of a regime change. And both the Kiwi CAD and Aussie CAD as well is something I'll be paying attention to along with the dollar crosses.
Well, great analysis, Ankit. And I do think that dollar is a very, very compelling trade. I think it needs to break down a little bit more. And I like all of the dollar crosses. And for me, I know you like Aussie dollar. For me, I like dollar Swiss franc. I think that's going to be the one to take a look at. So busy week this week. It really starts to get busy on Monday night. So I don't see any reason to go out there and mess around on Sunday night, Monday day. I think the fireworks start with the RBA, which is on Monday night. And then we have just tons and tons of news all week long. So I think it's going to be a great trading week. I think the equities are going to stall out a bit, but I think the move in cryptos and the move in currencies is pretty clear, pretty strong. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone have a great weekend, and let's go make some pips next week. Bye, everybody.